Obviously, you've read the Atlantic article that's now a subject of a defamation lawsuit brought by.
I absolutely did not read that article, but go ahead with your question.
I just, without, obviously it's up in litigation now, have you separately just heard any concerns, given your supervision over the FBI director, about any problems with drinking?
I have a lot of concerns, and my concerns are completely around the anonymous reporting that comes forth constantly. That reporters have an obligation to report, and they have due diligence that they're supposed to do. And when an entire article is based on anonymous sources, and there's things in the article suggesting, for example, apparently that senior DOJ personnel were informed of something, that's me. I wasn't informed. No one called me about that. So, listen, I did not read that article. It is a subject of litigation, but I've already spent too much time talking about it. Next question. Go ahead.
On that, Todd, I'm sorry. The FBI director is on camera with the U.S. Olympic hockey team chugging a beer. Do you think that that's appropriate conduct for the FBI director?
That has nothing to do with the article.
I just want to make sure I understand. You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
I'm not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that. And so what the investigation found, according to the indictment that was returned today, is that they were paying. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism. And over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they call them field, basically to informants, for information, for access, to just pay them for certain, to do certain things. And so, yes, that's exactly what the indictment charges.
Mr. Acting Attorney General, how did they get away with this for so long?
It's a great question. I said today during the press conference that we know that this investigation was opened during the Biden administration and then mysteriously closed. I really don't have any information about why it was closed. And then we started again last year, the FBI did, working with the U.S. Attorney in Alabama. And it's extraordinarily egregious. You just talked about it. But imagine a donor to the SPLC if they were told, by the way, we're going to give the money you're giving us to the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? In some cases, over $1 million. It's incredible.
Now, they say they're no longer using these informants in this way and that it was necessary because they had all sorts of threats against the organization, firebombing threats and other acts of purported violence. And that's why they had to use these informants. And to that, you say?
Well, to that, I say, for one, the indictment charges all the way through 2023. So I'm here to speak about what they're doing right now, but that indictment charges a long period of time through 2023. And second, and more importantly, there's no allegation or information in the indictment that suggests they shared that information with law enforcement. They have communicated.
They said they did.
Well, they have communicated when they so chose with law enforcement over the years. There's no information that we have that suggests that the money that they were paying to these informants and these members of these organizations, they then turned around and shared what they learned with law enforcement. To the contrary, or else we would have known from their own words that they had given this money to these guys, and we didn't know it.
Yeah, baby, it's episode 79 of The Whiners on April 23rd, 2026. Jeff Norman and Morgan Blythe with you, as we always are on Thursday nights. Our other co-host, Ryan Milton, is on his way to China. How exciting. But we have a special guest tonight, so it's exciting here for us as well. As Executive Director of the Institute for Sound Public Policy and founder of U.S. Tech Workers, Kevin Lynn advocates for immigration reform and economic nationalism. The Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled two of his affiliated organizations hate groups. And Kevin joins us tonight to discuss how that label has affected fundraising and what he thinks about the indictment just handed down to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Good evening to you both. How are you, beautiful humans?
Jeff, it is great to be here. Thanks, Morgan. Great to be here with you. Jeff, again, great to be here with you guys.
Likewise. Yes, this is very, very interesting news. Want to get right to it. So you had a Substack article that you put out that kind of goes into some of the defamatory claims that this Southern Poverty Law Center was going into. Could you speak more into that?
Sure, absolutely. Maybe we should step back. To me, when I look at this, probably a few people in the country are more pleased to see what came out of that indictment than I was against the SPLC, but because they began targeting my organization back 16 years ago in 2010. And the amazing thing is, you got to so stepping back, we
This is the
have
one. This is the one from
that's
2010,
yeah,
right here.
right. That's the 2010 article. And it's interesting. Maybe to put some perspective in this. So I at the time, Jeff, this is when, we were both in each other's orbit kind of in Los Angeles. I was on the
Never
executive.
detected any hate, by the way. It's just let me
Yeah,
say that.
really. I was such a hater, I don't know. But right around 2007, I was at an executive board meeting of the California Democratic Party. I was a delegate to the party and a very well-known progressive. I was running the Pasadena Democracy for America. Then I moved to downtown Los Angeles and, was still active in Democratic Party politics, CADEM, California Democratic Party. And we're at a town hall on immigration. Now, I'm the son of an immigrant. My mother was born and raised on a dairy farm in Ireland. And she came here in 1952. Now, that year, we only let out 178,000 green cards total. There were no employment visas. Like, contrast that today to where we bring in 1.2 million people roughly every year legally through either family based or employment based. We bring in another 1.2 million on one form of employment visa or another, whether, it's amazing. On employment visas alone, it's like the populations of Alaska and Montana, where, they're either on like H-1B visas that go to white collar professionals, L-1 intercompany transfers, things like that. And that's not even counting the agricultural visas, the H-2As and the H-2B, the seasonal workers you might find at a resort. So it was in 1952, it was a good time for immigrants. It was a good time for the native born. We built the middle class. Immigration was very restrictive and very well regulated. And I'll give you some anecdotal evidence of this.
Well, not
My
too much
mother-
because we got to get into the current too. So let's
Okay,
not
we'll
too much
back
background.
off.
This is interesting.
Just know
Yeah.
that it was a good time. Immigration system was working for Americans at that time. 1965, all that changed. We won't go into that. So I'm at an immigration town hall at one of the annual meetings of the California Democratic Party, and I get up and I say, look, I've yet to see how more people is going to improve our healthcare infrastructure, our transportation, or this or that. And people just went ballistic. I mean, one woman was waving a cane around saying, get them out of here, get them out of here. But afterward, all these people come running up to me and they're putting cards in my hand saying, thank God someone's saying it. Well, that ultimately led to a meeting with a fellow by the name of Dick Lamb, who had been a 3-term governor of Colorado, a Democrat who was, interestingly enough, equally loved and hated by Democrats and Republicans alike. He was a populist he was very prudent in his administrations. And we were like, we have to come up with a way to do outreach to the left on immigration and kind of bring them back to the glory days when immigration worked for America and it wasn't interfering with people's jobs, whether they be low skilled, high skilled, wasn't an issue. So we created a thing called Progressives for Immigration Reform. I set up the bank accounts for it. We got some funding. And we hired an executive director. Interestingly enough, a woman by the name of Leah Durant, who was an African American. She was in the the Bush administration's DOJ, I believe it was. And we get rolling along. And for those who know me, I'm probably the only person under 70 who's a known Malthusian. I, I'm kind of allergic to large populations of people, I guess. And it kind of runs through a lot of personal and public philosophy. So we were making a case for the environmental uh, issues of unbridled immigration and literally tracking that very effectively in terms of the impact it would have on population, urban growth, uh, the impact on resources, all that. And that's in 2010. The Southern Poverty Law Center came out with that article and hit us as calling us greenwashers. And again, pretty amazing when you consider the constituency of our board. So that's where it all kind of began. However, they didn't say for a long time, they would never say my name in anything. It was almost like it was verboten. You can't say Kevin Lynn. You can talk about the organization, and I think what it is, it's my progressive credentials that were kind of creating a lot of dissonance within the deep state at this time. So, in 2020 is when they did their first hit piece on me, and then after that, it was free range on using, calling me out personally and everything. Right, and that's the article. They had linked me to VDare, and they linked our group, U.S. tech workers. You want to learn about the H-1B visa, go to at U.S. tech workers on X. And they also called me out for, my concerns over every year we have from just U.S. medical schools, we have roughly 1,300 doctors who graduate and don't get residencies. Where at the same time, over 6,000 foreign trained physicians get residencies at U.S. teaching hospitals. And I bring attention to things like that. And so I was being called out, of course, the usual, racist, xenophobic, all of these things. And I think what a lot of it was, you had to look at what happened in 2019. So in 2019, Morris Dees, I keep wanting to say Rick Dees when I think of his name, but Morris Dees and I can't think of the fellow who was the COO. They founded the Southern Poverty Law Center in 1971. And what's amazing to me, guys, is they, this was an organization founded by two white guys that really, from its founding, they really didn't have any. There were no prominent African Americans within in leadership positions in their organization, and it was really
But you had blacks in your organization,
Oh
right? In
yeah, there
leadership.
was a point where 90% of our board were African Americans. For instance, Yvette Carnell, one of the co-founders of American Descendants of Slaves, was on our board. Frank Morris, uh, who left our board.
Real blacks or like Barack Obama kind of blacks?
No, real
I'm just
American descendants of slaves, everyone. And yeah, and Frank had actually been the economist for the Congressional Black Caucus for a number of years. And interestingly enough, Frank, years ago, and another one of our board members, Ben Zuckerman, who wasn't black, you can,
Jew.
from the name, but they were on the board of the Sierra Club. And from the 50s through the 60s through the 70s, the Sierra Club was let's say, really pushed a population stabilization agenda. Again, being an environmental group, they understood the impact of urban growth and sprawl and resource consumption. And when they did the flip switch there, that's a whole nother story and why it happened. Frank Morris and Ben Zuckerman were on the board of the Sierra Club, and they actually got voted off. It was kind of a civil war that went on at the time. So again, all of our people had were really concerned about minorities here in the U.S., had strong credentials when it came to the environment and wanting to protect the environment. But that's what the Southern Poverty Law Center chose to attack us on then. And again, what's amazing about this is, again, it was an organization that really didn't do a very good job of employing Black African Americans in their organization. Rick Dees, what really led to and it was
Rick Dees? Rick Dees?
Morris Dees. I shouldn't have said Rick Dees earlier on. That's an easy thing to do. But
And then it's his brother. Don't forget his brother, Harpo Dees. He's my favorite. My favorite Dees brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So what led to the staff revolt? Apparently, Morris Dees was quite the lech, and there were so many complaints being filed, and for years, decades even, all this was being hushed up. To finally, they couldn't do any cover it up anymore, and at that point, Dees and the co-founder were jettisoned from the board, or jettisoned from the organization completely, and they brought in a woman. She had just come from running Amnesty International to kind of, I probably help clean things up. But that's in 2019 is when they did that, and 2020 is when they started coming at me personally. I suppose, the staff that needed to demonstrate their chops and all of this. But yeah, so that's kind of my story.
Well, I would love to have a lawyer on. In fact, Tuesday night on Probable Cause, we're trying to get Andrew Branco or some lawyer, because I really don't know how strong this case is against them. But emotionally, I'm like, get him, because I can't stand these bastards. So, but you're well positioned to share with the audience what they did to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the fundraising, how it had an effect?
Absolutely. And I'll give, one funding story in particular. So
the guy in North Carolina, Morgan and I live in North Carolina. Could you introduce me to him, and maybe we can get some money out of him?
He is the quintessential Southern gentleman. I mean, when I met him, he was at that time 90 or 92. He's up there right now. He's probably
He's still alive, right?
What's still alive. Yep. Fred Stambeck. Now, Fred, interestingly enough, he was best man at Warren Buffett's wedding. And so he was probably able to leverage that relationship into becoming much wealthier. But he took a lot of that wealth and invested in the Foundation for the Carolinas and other environmental groups. They've saved thousands and thousands of acres of wild open spaces. They've led a number of different immigration priorities and projects across the country. And Fred and I saw eye to eye on when it came to population, and the easiest way to hit population to stabilize the population is to lower the number of immigrants. Now, again,
where your paths cross, he cared about the environment, and you hate minorities, so that was a perfect match.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and everyone else. I'm a real homophobe and all that other stuff,
Well, it's not so bad if you're just a misanthrope and you hate everybody equally. So,
I'm sure there's some group I like out there. I just haven't found them yet.
All right. So tell us, what did the wonderful Southern Poverty Law Center say to that man to stop him from giving you money?
Well, what they did was they began to attack him in articles. Again, defaming him, calling him a anti-immigrant person, saying that he was anti-immigrant, that he was helping fund groups that were racist. Because he funded our organization. He also funded organizations like FAIR, the Federation of Americans for Immigration Reform, Numbers USA, Center for Immigration Studies. And again, it wasn't ever a lot of money, but it was a chunk of change, and they attacked him for that. And also too, because he was an alumni of Duke University, he funded different intern programs there, and we would have interns come and work for us over the course of the years, and so they attacked him for that. And as a result, people are concerned about their reputation, what they leave behind. You ultimately, at the end of the day, what you leave behind is perhaps an institution, but more importantly, your reputation. So they endangered that. And as a result, funding got pulled from my organization and all the others that were involved in, immigration policy.
Right. Yeah, that's why I'm so happy about this, because they call everybody else, a member of hate groups, but nobody's more hateful than they are, and their tentacles reach like everywhere. It seems what came out in this indictment was that $270,000 was given to Unite the Right, which was the organization that organized the Charlottesville rally, and that gave rise to the I'm spacing on it.
The whole Charlottesville.
The fine people hooks. I was spacing out on
yeah,
that.
Right.
Yeah, the fine people hooks. That's when Trump said that there were some very fine people there, and he added that he's not referring to the white supremacists and so forth. But then they kept that out. All the news media jumped all over it and just omitted that part of it. And Joe Biden said he wasn't going to run for president, but he decided to run just because of that. And I mean, that was really a big deal. Let me play a clip.
Okay, please do. I think that's informative.
Just to give you an idea of how the media played along with this, and how, the relationship that the Southern Poverty Law Center had with the media. They're in cahoots.
Talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists. You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did.
Those are the receipts. Why doesn't President Trump condemn racism? His own words and actions tell you why. He's a racist.
Okay, I'm being told we have it. Thank you. Run it, please.
Excuse me, to protest. Excuse me, they didn't look themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
That was President Trump saying that very fine people were marching alongside neo-Nazis and skinheads and white supremacists, people who had chanted Jews will not. Yes, those people, the anti-Semites in Charlottesville.
They were tapping into the deep and dark vein of what's known today as replacement theory. Now, most people watching that would be outraged. The former president said this.
They showed up in Charlottesville. Excuse me, to protest. Excuse me, they didn't look themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Very fine people among Americans that night chanting Nazi slogans.
Man who has often struggled to unequivocally denounce white supremacists.
They showed up in Charlottesville. Excuse me, to protest. Excuse me, they didn't look themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Those words have power, they have meaning, and when Donald Trump speaks, the world listens. Neo-Nazis and white supremacists certainly listen. So why can't he denounce them? Why can't he reject their support?
And on and on and on it went. To this day, I think people aren't aware that he actually said he's not referring to the white supremacists.
Right, and he unequivocally said that. And, just stepping back again, what actually happened earlier this week was of the 11 counts, they included against the Southern Poverty Law Center, included wire fraud, false statements to federally insured banks, a conspiracy to commit concealment of money laundering, the allegation that they paid an informant for an informant program, and they had, they weren't. That was 4 programs that were supposed to be ideologically opposed to. It also alleges that between 2014 and 2023, they secretly funneled more than $3 million to individuals associated with violent extremist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nation, and National Alliance. So, I mean, it's a healthy set of charges there, and it really brings into focus what are they all about. For years, and this is from people I know who used to donate to them, they basically said Morris Dees was running a marketing company. And so what they need to do is that old adage, if you don't have any robbers, you don't need cops. Well, you whip up the hate, and I think this is exactly what was being done, because I mean, it's so funny.
They may have actually made the Charlottesville thing happen. Actually, I mean, who knows?
I mean, $250,000.
They paid somebody $270,000 for something, right? Let me just show 2 more clips, because I don't want people to have the impression I'm exaggerating here. I'm going to show you Biden saying that he ran solely because of that fine people hoax, and then a few clips, a compilation of how Biden just milked it on the campaign trail before he became a vegetable and stopped campaigning, that is.
So I got in this race early on in 2020 for the 2020 race. I wasn't going to run again because I lost my son. I didn't, and until I watched what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. Those folks coming out of the woods with torches, carrying swastikas, singing the same Nazi bile. It was accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan, and a young woman was killed. And I was a bystander. And the then president was asked, what do you think? He said, they're very fine people on both sides. Not fine people on both sides.
All right, and watch this, just a little compilation of how much Biden returned to this.
Remember what you saw on television. Remember seeing those neo-Nazis and Klansmen and white supremacists coming out of fields with lighted torches. You remember what the president said when asked?
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Their veins bulging.
He said specifically that he was condemning them.
He did not. He said he walked out and he said, let's get this straight. The veins bulging on their, as they were screaming. Remember, just close your eyes and picture what it was. Their veins bulging. Their veins bulging. Nazi sympathizers carrying Nazi fags. Veins bulging. Their veins bulging. Veins bulging. Veins bulging. How are you, baby? How old are you? Their veins bulging. Yes, their veins bulging. Bulging. Veins. Well, I'm sick and tired of smart guys. Their veins they're bulging. Their veins bulging. Their veins bulging. Veins is bulging. Bulging. Fewer. Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it?
Racism is evil.
Damn it.
And those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as America.
I bet there were other examples too, but let me, hats off to Mays, another North Carolina resident. He's the one who put those videos together. Good follow on X, Maze, M-A-Z-E.
Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're alleging that they were making these payments as informants, using these people as informants. I just think that's important to say. But I know that this indictment is also alleging that the fact that they concealed those methods
from their boards.
Yes, is a part of the reason of why they were indicted. And they were indicted by in Alabama, not so much this, because it's being portrayed as the Trump administration's going after some of their their enemies on the federal level, which this isn't the case, given that this was a grand jury indictment coming out of Alabama. I have a small video of their statement after this indictment kind of came to light 2 days ago, so I just want to go ahead and play that. Just
a criminal investigation and possible charges against the SPLC or some of our employees. Although we don't know all the details, the focus appears to be on the SPLC's prior use of paid confidential informants to gather credible intelligence on extremely violent groups. We frequently shared what we learned from informants with local and federal law enforcement, including the FBI. We did not, however, share our use of informants broadly with anyone to protect the identity and safety of the informants and their families. And while we no longer work with paid informants, we continue to take their safety seriously. Today, the federal government has been weaponized to dismantle the rights of our nation's most vulnerable people, and any organization like ours that tries to stand in the breach. We stood in the...
That's probably all we need to see, but I think the last little bit where they're still trying, or you still have this probably a fundraising ploy to say that this administration is kind of going after us, and we're on the front lines of this, which is very interesting given that this indictment came out of Alabama.
Well, I mean, that's why I said before, I'm really craving some good, solid legal analysis from somebody who's credible, not biased. And I haven't seen it yet. I've seen a couple of anti-Trump lawyers say it's a weak case, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But I think one thing, it's sort of you're knocking down a straw man if you say, oh, it's okay to use informants, because the argument isn't that you can't use informants. It's a matter of, well, how did you use them? How much did you pay them? Over what period of time? What does the evidence show that they did? What communication was there between SLPC and the FBI? Because in this video, we just heard this guy say, oh, they shared the information, but Todd Blanche in his press conference said they didn't share it. So this is why we have trials,
Yeah.
Or certainly an opportunity for that, because what I love about those tapes, what you just showed, was that they're saying, well, yeah, this like, it's almost like they're running these informant networks. Well, $275,000 buys a lot of informing. $3 million buys a lot of informing. This is like, and I've done big rallies, and $250,000, allows you to put on a big rally, feed people, and bust them in. That's what that kind of money does. And that's what I believe was done at a place like Charlotte. And what it does more than anything else, it fractures the credibility of this institution. Mm-hmm. And what's important about that is, for decades, politicians, government, law enforcement agencies, citizenry relied on their analysis and their what they say, they call it now an opinion, because you can't be sued for an opinion, supposedly. But that fortunately has been fractured. And what we're seeing is, wait a minute, they're not trying to fight racism and white nationalism, all this stuff. They're actually keeping it going. They're, something that probably would have just died out on its own. They seem to be working to resuscitate and keep out there so they can then hold out as some boogeyman. So.
Yeah, I mean, when we both lived in LA, they used to say that about the nonprofits that supposedly were trying to solve homelessness, but it really seemed like they were perpetuating homelessness to justify their existence and keep the money coming in. But they never went so far as the Southern Poverty Law Center is accused of doing. That's really going far to justify their existence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, personally speaking, had I known about this, I would have probably threatened to shut my doors 10 years ago. and say, hey, help a brother out, hey, and there'll be, and who knows, maybe someone would come by and said, what do you need?
Well, what are you guys going to do now? Are you going to go back to some of the journalists who believed this terrible organization and say, now look, maybe you might want to write some new articles and give us some love?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the journalists. I'm going to go back to the donors who left us. And say, look, this is really what was going on. Our message, we were being our authentic selves. Our message was spot on. It was just, they just used it to raise money for this organization. And when you look at it again, you look at in 2019, the speedy departure of the founder and the co-founder of the organization, and all the complaints that were being lodged against them internally. It was a highly dysfunctional organization. And it just, for whatever reasons, because they were generating a lot of cash. I mean, they were able to raise roughly $40 million a year. I recall seeing those numbers way back. And
you're talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center?
The Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah.
And the way they would do it, so Morris Dees would go on tour. And I was talking to a woman when I was living in Los Angeles who had seen him a couple nights before. And, she was donating to them as a result. So they were raking in a lot of cash over the years.
I'm trying to read they surged from 80. I can't read it. Sorry. It says actually in the sub-headline there how much their revenue increased after the Charlottesville rally.
Oh, I'm sure it increased.
It looks like 51 million to 133 million.
Oh, wow. You have good eyesight, Morgan. Very good.
I could be wrong. The first 50 something, it looks a little too faint, so I could be messed up those numbers, but I see the 133 clearly.
I mean, this is an organization that's probably brought in over $1 billion over the years. So it's got a war chest, and they chose to go to war against people like me, and pretty much using us to fundraise through.
But also using your base, like you said, you had instances that you know of, and I'm sure there are far more that you don't know of people that may have been willing to donate to your cause, but then were turned away due to this, this kind of defamatory claims, calling you a hate group. And I think this is a pattern that happens, I think right after Occupy Wall Street, there was all these, this graph that is kind of famous. It shows how mainstream media started using the term like racism and started talking about racism, started dividing people that were once united on this Occupy Wall Street, calling out the top 1% and trying to call for sound reform in that respect, and how it took on a life of its own. We have with the Biden administration, all these, white nationalism that was deemed as hate group, this really big thing that was taking over America by storm. I think probably maybe the ends of Obama into Trump and then through Biden. And then, like we all know here, how the Democrats and the Republicans alike, but the Democrats being the sole people in office, were funding the Nazis in Ukraine, literal actual Nazis that glorified the Holocaust. And I think there are some Democrats who have gone on record that says at least they're fighting on our side, even though they somewhat acknowledge that these are Nazis. And, I guess, fortunately, they have all kind of, on the front lines, they no longer exist. I believe the Azov Battalion has kind of been diminished significantly through the war.
But in their time, they'd killed over 40,000 Russians living in the Donbass. So.
Yeah. Or, I think, was it the Canadian government gave a standing ovation to a literal Nazi and called him a freedom fighter from the Russians in World War II.
And it goes to show the race. They really don't even believe in the racism themselves, because they're not principle centered in that manner. It's a tool. And they know it's interesting. If you've been looking to restrict immigration, and I'm going to weighing back to Samuel Gompers, who founded the AFL, what is now the AFL-CIO. And he said, if you attempt to want to restrict immigration, you're going to find yourself opposed by two bodies. One, the chambers of commerce that want to see more people brought in that keep labor destabilized and keep this revolving door of labor and that they can exploit. And the other are the ethnic lobbies that want more of their own in. And so what they've been able to do since 1965, really, when things started to turn, is say, wow, if you want to restrict immigration, you're a racist. You're not looking into labor doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is ruled by the same laws of supply and demand that capital is. So when you increase the number of people, increase the number of workers, you're going to be able to lower wages and benefits and work rules. When we restricted immigration between 1924 and 1965, all we saw were wages going up. People were retiring at the end of 30 years with a watch. It was again a good time to be a worker. We built the middle class, and ever since then, what's happened is we have lowered the standard of living for all Americans, and particularly minorities. Eugene McCarthy, who was the very liberal Democratic senator from Minnesota, he said his greatest regret the time that he was in the Senate was the Immigration Act in 1965 that essentially liberalized immigration. Even though they said the point was to increase the diversity but not the number of immigrants, it actually led to a significant increase in the numbers. And he said because the very minorities that we were trying to help, that social safety net, those monies were actually being consumed by the new arrivals because many of the new arrivals were coming from countries that were poor. And so they arrived here indigent, as opposed to Northern Europeans who were able to join the workforce and not need any kind of government subsidy.
Yeah, one of the members of our audience has this same attitude, Stefan, nice guy, but he's basically, calling you a racist because of your position, even though there are, people of color who agree with you. Like, you can't have that opinion. So I have the screenshot. We put it before on my computer, and I can read it on my computer. Morgan, go to the head of the class. You have great eyesight. The SPLC's revenue reportedly surged from $51 million to $133 million in the year following the Charlottesville rally.
Yeah, but I guess I was trying to make the point that we have this division tactic that's in America, and it goes on both sides. I mean, if you right now the kind of the big terms are to shut people down. Oh, you're an anti-Semite, or you're a racist, or you're just a liberal, libtard, even though it shuts down conversations.
Yeah, that's happening a lot with people who are, deciding with Palestine and criticizing Israel policy.
Yes.
Anti-Semitic. It's like one of the rules. You can't say that,
But and you can't induce into that conversation, wow, why is a foreign country having so much control over our foreign and domestic policy? That instead of objectively looking at that and saying, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And we're seeing it. It's interesting because as the Southern Poverty Law Center has hung me out to dry on, I do push back against things like the H-1B visa, which is a work visa that was created in 1990 to bring in white-collar professional workers. And what that has done was, it's since 74% of the people that come in on that visa are from one country, India. And unlike any typical employment visa, this one is a dual intent. So if the employer decides to sponsor that foreign worker for a green card on an H-1B, they can. And so what it's led to is a a huge amount of immigration from India as a result of this.
Mhm.
And a few years ago, Modi was saying, what the control that Israel has over the US government, that's aspirational for India. And they're hoping their diaspora can do something similar here in the US and governments across the West.
Yeah. So it's an open secret kind of
Yeah.
thing, particularly that, that cause. But what I was trying to say is that I guess it primes people to silence themselves. I think this happened a lot during COVID, and kind of, you kind of stuck through it, but a lot of people would have been silenced if they were called a racist, a bigot, and a hateful person, would have kind of turned around and we neglected the cause because of how much hate they were getting. So that's another point that I wanted to make, is that it's also been used to really stifle legitimate dissent within the government and pushing for sound policy. And I think it started with that, and they saw how successful it was, and it has trickled on to other things. And it's kind of in this broad-based things where you have these people in their silos that if you use these trigger words, it's like a gloss goes over their eyes, and then you can't talk to them. It's honestly concerning how it's like, it seems like there is like this frequency that like clicks on this.
Like the word
And
hate, for example.
I think
They
the
are so.
yeah, I think the term
They're
frequency is
so in love with the word hate.
Yeah.
Hate. It's like racist. Hate. Go ahead, Kevin.
But I think Morgan's, it is a frequency, and they've uncovered this. And what they're able to do is keep us fighting amongst ourselves and start saying, for instance, what we should be saying is, wait a minute, it's not, the race you are, your gender, all these things. It's your class. Because if you're someone who is a wage earner, you have been absolutely mauled over the last 40 years, since the 70s. You have just found your
Morgan, do you feel
quality
you've
of
been
life.
mauled over the last 40 years?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking Morgan if she feels like she's been mauled over the last 40
My
years.
generation has gotten kind of the short end of
Yeah.
the stick,
Yeah.
being sold, okay, go to college, get the degree, and then you'll get the great, career that follows, even though you come out of in
Right.
debt, and
Yeah.
a lot of these.
Well,
the
that's
percentage
the
of people
other
that can buy a
that's-
house has gone way down.
Yeah, that's the other class, Morgan. So you have your wage earners that have been mauled. And also now, the professionals. These are the salaried people who get benefits, okay? So the most recent graduates in computer science, they have an unemployment rate between 6 and 7%. Now understand, they've just graduated college. They've, everyone was told to learn to code, right? Well, their unemployment rate is higher than someone who didn't go to college. Might be, a blue collar worker with much lower skills. So what we're seeing is immigration, initially was impacting a lot of lower skilled workers. We would bring workers, for instance, when I was a kid, a construction job, just sweeping the shop floor was an entree into a good middle class lifestyle. It's not that case anymore, because a lot of construction has been taken, they use immigrant labor, some of it legal, some of it illegal. Have you guys seen the movie Chavez? There was a movie done about Cesar Chavez.
I am terrible at movies. No, anyone who asks me if you've seen this movie, I make them so angry, because it's like I live under a rock.
Well, there was a great scene in it where the pickers are striking, and the grower, calls his headman. And he goes, "Look, you get a truck. No, you get 2 trucks. You go down the border and you pick up Mexicans and you bring them up here to work." And that shows you that, and after Chavez was successful in the fields, people, I remember talking to one guy who said, yeah, I mean, he picked fruit for like 6 years out of high school, and he was able to have an apartment, get a truck, things like that. So, but what's happened now that we've had so much immigration, a lot of the jobs, whether they're lower skilled, as I just mentioned, with higher skilled, Americans are really being muscled out. And then you add onto that a really healthy heaping of offshoring of our manufacturing jobs. And now I was just doing an interview with Great Britain News today, and we were talking about Salesforce.com. And Mark Benoff, the CEO, said, this is the Indian era. So they're moving almost all of their work over to India. And the amazing thing is, the vast majority of their client base, where they get their money from, is here in the U.S., but it won't be Americans doing those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I have an awkward segue. Speaking of Indians, no. It is actually relevant because this Atlantic hit piece came out on Kash Patel just a few days before the indictment was announced. And there is a plausible theory out there that the timing is all about trying to hurt his credibility at this particular time. The Atlantic certainly in the past has participated in smear jobs.
Absolutely.
And I think it's journalistic malfeasance that they didn't interview Dan Bongino in this article. Even if you think Dan Bongino is not a truthful person, he was the number 2 guy at the FBI. And this article is saying the number 1 guy was too drunk to show up for work X amount of time. And people can't find him. They can't wake him up. It's like, well, I guess if that were true, the number 2 guy would know about it. So
you would think.
And the fact they didn't even talk to Dan Bongino suggests, well, they didn't want anybody in there who would dispute their story. So I don't think this is a credible story. I think what they do is find a kernel of truth and then exaggerate it to the nth degree. So we've seen Kash Patel swigging beer with the Olympic team. He hangs out in Las Vegas. He probably enjoys some adult beverages. Many of us enjoy,
as we do.
Yeah.
I'm drinking wine. I do.
But as far as is he really passing out and not showing up to work and they can't wake him up? I don't know. I'm pretty suspicious of this. So, yes, it was an awkward segue, but that's why I wanted to mention.
No, to me, it's again the Atlantic. So many of if you get stories published in the Atlantic, you know what will and won't survive the editors. Back last fall, I had an article done on me in the New York Times, and what was shocking, there's a professor in Northern California, and he said it wasn't the content of the article that shocked me. It was the fact they ran it, and it was actually a favorable article to me on me and what I've been doing in the immigration realm. But that is really rare that someone an article like that will actually get through the editors. So I think they know how. Again, I'm a bit conspiratorial as you are, Jeff, on these matters. I think
it's reasonable to ask why now? Why did the story come out now anyway? And it's reasonable to ask why they didn't interview the number 2 guy or Todd Blanche. Now let's have one of our periodic little quarrels with Stefan, and he left, Jeff, Dan Bongino. Yes. So therefore what? What's your plan? But this Stefan is the one that was basically calling you a racist, and he denied it. Let me just show you what he said. Here he is denying it. The words hate or racist never came out of my mouth. Okay, I didn't say they did. But right after I jokingly said that Kevin hates minorities, here's what Stefan, the first truth bomb from Jeff. And here's another one.
Yeah, everyone knows. I'm just waiting to say the N-word.
And here's another one of Stefan's comments. Give me a break. Here's another one looking for scapegoats. First blacks, then immigrants, then Latinos, then Muslims, garnished with laughter and jokes. Maybe I misinterpreted it, but I took that to mean you or accusing
Yeah,
us of
again, this is
sugarcoating.
race baiting in that.
Yeah.
Again, it is about looking at this thing objectively. It is always about the numbers. And when you bring in a lot of people, you're going to see a lot of workers, a lot of people of prime working age. You're going to see an impact in terms of wages and job opportunities for the native born. The people that are impacted the most by this are Black Americans. They've been pushed out of the construction trades and a lot of other work. And again, we've lowered the floor on a lot of these jobs. And also, too, don't forget white collar jobs as well now, because between the H-1B visa, the STEM OPT and OPT work authorizations, the L-1 visa, H-4 EAD, and a whole alphabet soup of other ones, they're able to bring in people that have been effectively displacing our white collar worker Americans since 1990. And now we've seen, and the ultimate impact is the impact on labor force participation rates, which are the lowest ever. I mean, we have millions of working age American men that are simply out of the workforce. And right now, the red light should be flashing at the Department of Labor. And who knows, with DeRemer's departure, perhaps they will be now.
Just, I'm interested. So what about the kind of argument that you would get, and I'm sure you do get it. So the skilled workers and their visas, gaining the visas and coming over here to work, are they just outshining American workers in the competitive field of their test scores, their schooling, education?
I'm glad you brought that up, because the Professor Ron Hira of Howard University was testifying for Congress. And when you looked at the H-1B workers as a cohort, these are very ordinary workers, first off. Number one, they're not selected on merit. And what I mean by that is, so we bring about 120,000 H-1Bs into the country every year. 65,000, the initial cohort, are decided through a lottery. So let's just say you have a PhD from the India Institute of Technology. You have as much a chance of getting an H-1B visa as someone who might have a BTech degree from Bangalore Computer Science College. So they're not choosing them by merit. Then another
quota kind of thing.
Yeah, and then another 20,000. That's if you graduate from an American university with an advanced degree. And then the other are nonprofits, government organizations there's no cap to the number of H-1Bs. Now, half of our postdocs in America are foreigners here on temporary work visas. And Nature magazine did a really good article on this. I bet it was 6 years ago. And what they found was these postdoc workers, if you're a foreigner on an employment visa, you are essentially an indentured servant to that project investigator. One guy said, when he came over, he had an agreed upon salary, and the project investigator said, the PI said, look, we need you to take a haircut on that. And he began to express his umbrage, and he said, well, I guess you really don't want to work here. So he accepted it. Another guy was like, look, is it normal to be working 80 hours a week in the lab and sleeping on the floors? So it's part of it's the price. Part of it too is they have indentured servants, corporations, the way.
Well, you know what? Let me interrupt because Helen has a question about that. She's one of our regulars. This is a good question. She says she remembers back in the day hearing employers being prosecuted for hiring illegal immigrants, but now she hears nothing. And her question is, why why not? Are employers no longer being held accountable?
Well, we do very little to no workplace enforcement. We saw and
So
yes,
she's saying, well, why not? I mean, that seems like a good.
exactly, and that was the norm up until 1965. Very tight workplace enforcement. Again, it's just a laxity that has crept into the system. And what happens is, so let's say a plant gets raided and the owners don't go to jail, they'll pay a fine. And so for those
Cost of doing business.
right, it becomes a cost of doing business. Now, an interesting aside, back during the first Trump administration, there were large raids done on poultry plants in the South. And the cool thing is, after they got rid of the illegal workers, they began to hire the local American workers for decent price. To get them there, they had to actually raise wages, improve working conditions, things like that. Imagine that, huh? Having to compete for labor.
I still see a reasonably priced chicken in the supermarket.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, here's another question. This guy is not the sort of question that I find impressive, but I would like to address it. He says, Bongino is a fucking retard, shit stain on humanity, Kash Patel, another fucking puppet wanker who is blind as the rest, stupid, retarded, profane wankers out there. Love the all caps. That always makes it more convincing, because it's more intellectual shame. But here's the thing. Let's assume, for the sake of conversation, that NO99Y, with his intellectual prowess, is absolutely right, that these two are terrible people. That still doesn't excuse the Atlantic. It's still just a fact that Dan Bongino was the number 2 guy.
Yeah,
So
it's a lack of journalistic integrity, I think, with them.
You're saying that they did not want to have Dan Bongino, or that was just not even addressed in the article?
Well, it wasn't addressed in the article, and we know that they didn't ask him because Dan Bongino said so, and they didn't mention it in the article, so obviously they never called him.
Okay. I don't know, but I mean, I just, I don't know.
Yeah, they would have put it, or should have put it in the article if they contacted him and he didn't want to comment. Yeah. And
I'm not impressed with either of those two individuals, but I do get what you're saying, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, because that's why I wanted to address that question, because even if you hate these people, even if you think they're 100 times worse than what this guy is saying, they still should have contacted people who are relevant, who are in the situation that they're addressing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
And don't you find too, I mean, so much of what goes for opposition out there seems to be controlled opposition. I mean, I was absolutely stunned with the Epstein revelations. I did appreciate going through a lot of the Epstein files, and to find that Steve Bannon is smoking and joking with Epstein, talking about how he's going to cover up, help him shine up his image and get him back out there. I mean, excuse me, that's really.
Was I in the Epstein files, by the way?
I didn't look, Jeff.
All right. I figured
was glad
everybody.
not to see my name there.
Oh, you were all right. Did you read it carefully? Maybe you are.
Some podcasters were, I think, Kurt Metzger, and Jimmy Dore. They were mentioned in the Epstein.
Oh, really? Was Jimmy
not
Dore
the fact that they were there, but they were.
Dore?
I'm sorry.
Was it like I hate Jimmy Dore?
Essentially, yeah. I think it was that, and I think Kurt Metzger. They were going to some kind of comedy club that he was there at, and so his name appeared in the files, but they weren't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Like,
but on this controlled opposition thing, going back to Charlottesville, I was at the MAGA Man March in November of 2020, and that was tens, if not hundreds of thousands of MAGA supporters were down there, walked the streets. And what was interesting is there were a lot of protesters. Now, the police had their backs to the MAGA people and their front to the protesters. They didn't view MAGA as a threat in any way. Now, fast forward to January 6, 2021, the people that were showing up as MAGA, I mean, they were throwing things at police, they were wearing masks. One thing that you would always know MAGA, they didn't wear masks. They weren't jabbed. They didn't wear masks. And they would never throw anything at the police. And so I was down there for that. And when I saw that happening, I was just like, I got to get out of here and I got to get my people out of here. This is not good. This is controlled opposition. And I think, so I'm hoping that the Southern Poverty Law Center, they've begun to pull that string on a ball of yarn, because I really want to see where this goes, guys.
Yeah.
If SPLC has been doing this, a lot of other NGOs have been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm not even that high on Dan Bongino or Kash Patel myself, but I always try to be fair. And I think it's worth pointing out that they have been saying, just wait, these investigations take time. And so here's one that has just seen the light of day finally.
Yeah.
And there may be more. There may be more.
And it's a big deal. For me personally, whether we have a case for, tortuous business, them involving themselves in my business somehow and hurting us, I don't know, defamation. I'm a public figure, so, but I think it would be great to see everyone on that list file lawsuits just to keep them really busy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. Even if the case is weak, their reputation is now being hurt, just like they hurt the reputation of so many other people. And as you say, if there are other lawsuits that they have to deal with, that can actually be fatal to the organization.
Yeah, and you never know what comes out in discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Somerville John makes a good point here that Act Blue is also under the microscope now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they've been doing
a shitload of money. A shitload of money. Is all of it kosher? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. What's this guy saying now? By the way, I'm just as retarded. Nothing special. You are the good guys. Love you. Oh, all right. Love you more. All right. Should we call it a night, guys? What do you think?
Boy, it's 8:10 already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The hour went really fast.
Time flew.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We plowed right into it without saying what we're drinking. And that's a violation of the format. We're going to be in trouble with the supervisor. I'm drinking a Sangiovese from southern Italy tonight that, as you can see, got an 88 rating by Wine Enthusiast. And I agree with the rating. It's quite good. And it looks to me like, Kevin, you might be enjoying a wine.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, before I got the call from you, I was going to be at the Thorn Winery here in Lancaster for a little get-together with friends. But I had to settle for, it's a Chardonnay, and I can't think of the maker, but they come in the
what do you mean you can't think of it? Have you considered looking at the bottle?
Well, it's a box, actually. I got it
at Whole Foods.
So it's the box at Whole Foods. That's the one that I got.
All right. Well, I'm not an elitist. I'm open to anything. I'm screw tops, boxes, wine in Ziploc baggies, whatever, as long as...
In alleys? I'm drinking water tonight. I know.
You're drinking water. All right, good. Stay hydrated, my friends. Stay hydrated. And Chardonnay, that's the Hillary Clinton drink of choice. And
I guess it is, huh? Yeah.
All the way. We have a very
It's a little
strong...
oaky. I like that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Kevin. And I guess it was kind of celebratory tonight, because even if the case against those bastards is weak, they are certainly, as I said, having their reputation harmed as they so
absolutely. They're right, as they have harmed others' reputation that they chose to. And I don't even believe they were. Well, I know Morris Dees isn't ideologically grounded in any way. When you look at how the staff was. Yeah, Morris Dees, good old Morris Dees. But again, I'm hoping it. Because this institution, I mean, they impact, apparently they train law enforcement officers, on hate groups and things like that. And I'm hoping all of that will come to an end.
All right,
Yeah, that's what I also wanted to get into. We didn't have time. There was a Substack article by Sayer G that kind of goes into that, how it talks about how free speech, the government can't make these laws to prohibit you from free speech, but they can and have been utilizing non-government agencies to basically coerce populations to deem people persona non gratas. They did that in COVID. So it's a really brilliant article about how he himself was attacked. And it was a UK NGO that wrote into America social media groups and got their pages taken down and them kind of defamed in that sense. So that was lightly touched upon that, but I think it's kind of what we see here with the Southern Poverty Law Center as well. So.
Well, we did have time. You just mentioned it, and I want to squeeze in one more video clip. This is because it's so funny to watch. The evidence. You can't really unless it's AI. You can't really argue with the video. But this is not AI. This is when Trump was running for the first time, and David Duke, the KKK guy, endorsed him, and Trump was like, constantly being asked to disavow him, as if it's like he has anything to do with David Duke. He can't help who endorses him, and so he started disavowing him. But people just kept asking him anyway, or accusing him, of not disavowing.
But isn't that kind of a journalistic ploy? What was what's the expression? Oh, I didn't care about the answer. I just wanted to see him defend himself.
Yeah, right. That's it. All right, watch these clips.
You've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. This is not exactly the people you want in your party.
Yeah, David Duke and all were disavowed. I disavowed him on Friday. I disavowed him right after that because I thought if there was any question.
I didn't even know he endorsed me. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow, okay?
I disavowed David Duke, and I disavowed him the day before at a major news conference. David Duke is a bad person who I disavowed on numerous occasions over the years. I'm saying to myself, how many times do I have to continue to disavow people?
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am. There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists.
I disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough. I disavowed him every time I speak to somebody virtually, and they just keep it going. They keep it going. And
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. You're probably about the 18th person that's asked me the question. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution.
How many times do I have to reject? I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. From the time I'm 5 years old, I rejected them. And I disavowed then. I disavowed today on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. I disavowed again. How many times are you supposed to disavow? But I disavow, and hopefully it's the final time I have to do it.
Kevin Lynn, do you disavow white supremacists?
And I absolutely disavow white supremacy. If anyone, I think like George W. Bush was a poster child that debunked, the notion of white supremacy. Look.
See, I think one time when Trump was asked, I think he didn't disavow him, but it was like along the lines of like, well, I have nothing to do with him, is what he was saying. You know, if you're running to try to get elected, don't you want everybody to vote for you? I mean, what's why wouldn't you want racists to vote for you? Anybody, you know, murderers, you want everybody to vote for you. A vote is a vote. Why would you want to needlessly start, you know, alienating people, even if they're horrible people, unless you have some connection to them or something, right?
Ask Hillary how that deplorable thing worked out.
Yeah, right. So all you racists out there, look, we want to bring up our viewership, so enjoy.
Yeah.
Or threaten to go out of business, Jeff. Who knows? You know, there could be another SPLC out there that will, you know, write you a big check.
My hat's getting lopsided. All right. Anything else we need to squeeze in? Or this is the long goodbye.
I know. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin, for giving us your time.
Thanks, Morgan.
And
thanks so much for having
it's always
me
a
on.
pleasure.
All right. And we disavowed everything that needs to be disavowed. So like I said, on Tuesday, we're trying to get some legal expert, perhaps Andrew Branca, to talk about this indictment. So it's not just, our emotions and biases ruling the day.
I will be all ears.
All right. I'll let you know. And that's Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
And thank you.